Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by hairy, huggable, homosexual heroes, I'm changing it up, who love talking about movies, to, of course, talk about movies. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host, Jim Poliafico.
Hey guys, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast.
And Will Lindis.
Hey to all of our listeners and to all of our viewers who are live with us right now. Welcome back to the show.
All right, so this week we will be discussing The Giver, the new young adults thing, and of course Locke, kind of an indie film that many of you may not even be aware of, but maybe you should be. We'll talk about that. But first, I just wanted to report back. So last week on our Ninja Turtle show, we were eating some pizza on the YouTube live feed, and I actually had someone on Bigger City contact me to let me know how hot it was watching us eat pizza on the podcast. So we made a joke about the Encourager crowd, but they're out there. And
was this someone that you knew?
No, it was not someone that I knew. So I thought it was pretty awesome, random faceless profile. I mean, I guess it could be someone I knew, but I've never interacted with that screen name before, so who knows? But
hey, now that's a win-win. If we can get more listeners and viewers just by eating, I mean, I'm down for that. I don't know.
I gotta say, there's very few things I'm really good at in this life. Should we start doing more like food and movie pairings?
I don't know. Maybe a different theme every.
We'll see.
Jim made these amazing brownies. What movie would that go with? They're not pot brownies, so Dazed and Confused wouldn't work. But what movie would you pair with brownies, Will?
Oof. Yeah, I mean, Half Baked. I mean, pretty much. I'm thinking like things in the realm of pot brownies.
Julia or whatever. Yeah. Julie and Julia.
Yeah.
There you go. That would work definitely. Or Jackie Brown. That would be awesome. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? Totally.
Jackie Brownies.
Love it. Best show title ever. Perfect. Oh boy. All right. Shake it off.
Yeah.
All right.
Good to go.
Well, to those of you who are already hanging out with us live, glad to have you guys as usual. Feel free to comment or submit your questions during the show, and we will possibly respond to some of those. I say possibly because people who are randomly just putting weird stuff out there to be weird and crazy, maybe not so much. But if you generally want to interact, please do so.
Yes. I mean, we've got a heckler balcony started already, I see in comments.
Yes, exactly. And who do we have in the heckler balcony this week, Jim?
We have Steve Bubba. He's a regular listener and regular watcher, I guess, of the podcast. So, and a fellow movie bear.
Yep, he's with the Sacramento Movie Bears, and gosh, and I can't remember which episode it was, but he joined us for an episode once upon a time.
Was it a contest or something?
No, he joined us as a guest on one of the episodes,
right.
But it was a while back. Which movie was that, Steve? You remember which movie that was?
Yeah, remind us. That was like 74 episodes ago.
Yeah, I know, right?
Crazy.
We're celebrating episode 91 tonight. Isn't that crazy, guys?
Ooh, 91. Ow, 100 is creeping up on us, guys.
Yeah.
It's funny.
We'll be counting them down.
Maybe we should go out and maybe for the people who are either watching on the live stream here or are going to listen to the podcast, we've got several weeks before our 100th anniversary show. Maybe or perhaps we should be soliciting ideas for what we should do for a 100th anniversary show.
Yes, there has been rumor that there might be a topless bear episode.
Yeah, and that doesn't have to be 100, but I mean,
well, that's true.
We're open to ideas for for episodes, and we really haven't formulated one for the 100th yet. So.
Yeah, give us your ideas if they're within reason. We may do it. I'm totally looking really, really grizzly this week. Damn, I need to shave. I feel like Mountain Man of the North.
Grizzly Brad.
Rawr, that's me. Anyway, all right. Well, we have a lot to talk about tonight. It is another double feature week, so we are going to get right into it, I feel. Are you guys ready to dish some young adults dystopian society stuff?
Yeah, if that's what we're going to start with, sure.
Precision of language, Brad.
Precision of language, exactly. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Our discussion of The Giver. All right, and FYI, Steve/Bubba replied that it was the Incredible Burt Wonderstone, which I think
that movie
was like episode 18 or something. It was from the early days, right around when we reviewed the Incredible, Great, and Powerful Oz, or whatever the F it was called.
Kind of in that same window. Like
yeah.
I'm not seeing that, but whatever. Oh, there it is. Yeah. I think I'm on a delay from you guys or something.
Are you on time delay? Yeah. It's tape delay. You're on the West Coast feed, Jim. We're on the Mountain Coast feed. Mountain Coast? Thanks. Whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's after the earthquake.
Mountain Standard Time. We don't do daylight savings time here.
So we'll fix it in post.
No, we don't need to edit that. You know, it's funny. Like when we first started this show, sorry, random aside, I used to spend so much time editing out our ums and ahs and long pauses and and now I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. Do it live.
Because you're not doing the editing.
Well, that's okay.
That too.
Oh boy. Well, all right. So, The Giver. Interesting film. That's one way of putting it. Jim, I think we're gonna pick your brain first. Maybe you could give us a little bit of a synopsis of what this film is
Sure.
about. Spoiler free, of course. We'll get to spoilers later with fair warning, but give us a little background and whether you think people should see this one.
Okay, we'll start with the background first. This is a new movie based on a 1994 novel by the same name, The Giver, written by Lois Lowry. I guess that's a woman. Written by a woman, I guess. And this movie stars some pretty big names. Jeff Bridges, we all know, as the dude. He does not play the dude in this movie. He plays another dude. This is Meryl Streep is in this movie, so it's got to be great, right? If Meryl Streep is in it, it's going to be freaking awesome. It's got a newcomer named Brenton Thwaites, who plays our young protagonist, Jonah, in the movie. Also, it stars Katie Holmes is in the movie, and also Taylor Swift is in there, I guess. I think I blinked and might have missed her. Or somebody's going to have to fill me in what character that Rosemary was.
We'll talk about that. Spoilers, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway. So anyway, the movie is really yet another story of a utopian society, supposedly a utopian society, that gets kind of unraveled by a gifted but uppity asshole teenager. No, it's a story of a utopian society. It takes place on what is presumably Earth, I guess in another time, maybe in the future, where Jonas, our protagonist, and his family live in what appears to be kind of an isolated section of Earth, but it's a perfect world, right? Maybe a little bit too perfect, as we learn as the movie goes on, where everyone is happy, they all live productive lives under a strict set of rules. Everything is very much the same for everybody in this society, and that's where the idea of utopia comes in, but really, is it everything it's cracked up to be? So Jonah, or I'm sorry, not Jonah, Jonas, right? Is it Jonas?
Indeed.
Jonas. Jonas is chosen when he's about 16, I guess, to be the community's so-called receiver of memories. And part of his job is to train with the older dude guy called the Giver. So Jonas is the receiver. The dude is the giver.
The dude above.
That right there, for you guys. And from hanging out with the Giver guy, Jonas learns about all the not-so-perfect stuff in the world, pain, sadness, and all these memories. After deciding that the community and the family life he's known is bogus and there's a lot of risk, and dramatic things start to happen. And we'll get into a lot of those when we get into spoilers. And I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm growing tired of the themes and tropes of this genre, because I was kind of bored with this movie. I guess around 30 minutes in, they're still doing a lot of exposition, and I was struggling a little bit trying to figure out what different this movie really had to offer. The one thing this movie did have going for it was kind of short. It was about a little bit over an hour and a half, so that was a good thing. Count that on the positive side for this movie. Besides, the setup of the world was pretty interesting for about the first 20 minutes, because you're kind of learning what this world is, what's happening, how everything is set up. But the problem with this movie, and it's becoming a common theme with me anyway, is if I can't find a character that I really kind of care about, then I start to lose interest in the movie. So I didn't read the book, but I would bet that the book was better than the movie ended up being. It would have to be, right? I mean, this was an award-winning book. It won the Newbery Medal for that year, 1994. It sold like over 10 million copies. But for me, the movie just didn't hold my interest that much. I didn't think it was as good as any, or even any recent young adult dystopian world, kind of movies that have been out lately. I mean, we can call The Hunger Games, Divergent, and there may be some others. So all I'd say is, if you're a fan of the book and you really want to see this kind of watered down, young adult dystopian drama with a bland story, and I thought with pretty unconvincing acting, I'd say go find a copy of Divergent and skip this movie. This one will probably be on Blu-ray pretty soon, Redbox. I would say it's definitely not a must-see in the movie theaters. Like I said, unless you're a super fan of the book and want to see how the movie stacks up right away. Otherwise, I'd say it's probably not worth a watch in the movie theater.
So real quick, a couple of live comments here. Steve, E.G. Bubba, says, The Giver. I always knew Jeff Bridges was a top. And
hey-o!
And Jesse, a friend of ours from here in Tucson, says, I'd be Jeff Bridges' receiver. So...
Well, it's funny because when we were watching the movie, Brad, if you remember, as soon as the whole receiver-giver thing was set up in the movie, we both looked at each other and knew that was going to be an area that was rich for discussion. And here we are.
Here we are, giving and receiving.
Will, what did you think? What were your impressions of the movie?
So I have not read this book, but I know a lot of people, maybe not necessarily in the same age category as me, but even people like a few years younger. Not only was this something that they grew up with, but I know this was in a lot of classrooms. Like there were, when you would get to this part in middle school or high school where you had to read literary science fiction. This is one of the books that was presented there. So there's obviously a foundation on some sort of book that's at least high enough quality to have received these accolades and to be this widely circulated. And again, I come at this having not read the book. For me, The Giver is this perfect example of how a film can possess, to me at least, a lot of really endearing positive qualities, but still fall short of being good because of one missing ingredient, and it's a huge missing ingredient. As a science fiction story, I would say it lays out a world that, and even an underlying narrative that, to me, I liked a little bit better than some of its contemporaries. You know, when we talk about compared to Divergent, I liked the world building better than Divergent. I like the core story to it. Now, there's going to be a lot of caveats, and I'm about to get to them. I thought the performances were good enough. I liked the there's this ever-present musical score that was just very kind of lilting and beautiful, and that carried through the movie. I liked that. And there was a decision, and we'll talk about why this decision was made, but there's this decision to use a combination of different color palettes that was creative. We've seen it in other places, but I get why they used it here. But at the end of the day, this is a film that's all about, it says that sameness is bad, and that emotion and passion are necessary components of humanity. And unfortunately, my big problem, that one big missing ingredient, comes from the fact that this film tries to structure and market itself using all of those same trappings that you see in all of these young adult films, you know, Divergent, Hunger Games, The Host, etc. And that sameness is contrary to its message. And this is a film with a message. It's just one that it's not able to really get across cleanly because it lacks that same passion that it exalts. Like I said, the performances are good enough. I didn't have any problems with the performances, but I didn't feel like the performances were invested. The musical score was beautiful, but I didn't feel like it really hit the right crescendos when it needed to. The color palettes were structurally sound, but they didn't really evoke that raw emotion that the film desperately needed at certain points. So, it's so frustrating. This is the kind of film, like, I wanted to like this film a lot, and I like the film that's underneath this film. I like the film that this film could and should have been. I think this could have been the best of the young adult films, but because it wrapped itself up in the marketing and structure of those other young adult films, it shot itself in the foot. I didn't really like the final product, and I'd say, hey, skip this one in theaters. Maybe check it on Redbox. Maybe check it on DVD rental. I think that there's definitely something there. There's something within this film that I think warrants maybe a watch, but definitely not in theaters. So I didn't hate it, but I was disappointed by what this film could have been.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. This film frustrated me. I mean, I went in pretty much divergent of expectations, and I'm glad I did. I mean, I've never read the book, so I didn't have that coming into it. Honestly, I hadn't even seen like a real trailer for it. I think all I had seen was like a teaser at some point. So I really didn't even know that much about what I was about to see, besides the fact that it was a young adult novel. And I love Jeff Bridges, and I do like Meryl Streep quite a bit, but it wasn't really enough to sell this movie, unfortunately. You know, for me, I love these dystopian sort of stories. I think they're awesome. I think they can present a lot of interesting things to say about our current world and where it's headed and how we're evolving as a species. But in this one, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the black and white color palette and it's the mood they're trying to evoke. But everything is you know, it starts off very bland and monochromatic, and even though the movie sort of takes you from there and things start happening and changing, I don't feel like we ever really broke out of that black and white mold for me. It just felt very rote. It felt very tired. I felt like Meryl Streep was kind of phoning it in. Jeff Bridges was all like, marble mouth the whole time, and I don't understand what he's trying to say, but I don't really know why he had to talk like that the whole time. When he's like the primary person who's giving all this exposition about what's going on, he just comes across as very unengaging. And Jim, just to kind of echo what you're saying, like, A, I hate pretentious kids, and this was full of pretentious kids. But B, when I don't care about the characters, it's hard for me to be emotionally invested. and then I start thinking about, work and everything else that's going on instead of the movie that I'm seeing to escape from the real world. So I wouldn't say don't see this movie. I think it's interesting, but I really wouldn't rush out to see it in movie theaters. This is something you could easily rent on iTunes or borrow from a friend at some point if you don't want to pay for it. Could be interesting. I am hearing if you loved the book, you may not like the movie as much from a few people I know who've read the book. But, I mean, overall, yeah.
We have a comment from Steve Bubba that I'd like to read.
Please do.
And then get your guys to chime in on his point here. He says, I was prepared to be cynical about this young adult film and all its, quote, I'm the most specialist teen, unquote, schmaltz. But I rather enjoyed its, quote, living, not just surviving, end quote, contemplations, even if they were only high school book club level contemplations. And I suppose, for me, I think I know what he's getting at here is that the movie's theme was, break out of the sameness if you want to really live life. And I get that. It was there, I think. I just don't think it did enough with it emotionally in the movie. I mean, we'll get into spoilers and what this movie tried to do emotionally and what worked and what didn't work. But I just don't think I'm kind of with you. I think the pieces maybe were there under the surface, and this movie just kind of dropped the ball and didn't follow through with some of the themes that I think could have worked to tie people emotionally to this movie. One of the things I wanted to mention was, I guess I was reading a little bit about the book, in that Jonas in the book is like 12 years old.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it's more of a very young child, I guess, young adolescent viewpoint, whereas this one, I think he's like 16 or something like that. 16,
it
17?
seemed like he was kind of in the late high school, post high school age, whatever that works out to.
Which is exactly the same spot that Katniss Everdeen started in, and what's her name from Divergent. They're trying to, like you said, Will, they're trying to fit in that same mold. Here you have a movie about breaking out of the mold and breaking the sameness, and they are trying to make it the same as those other movies just to capitalize on the popularity. And I think it hurt it in this case.
I love how...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love how you articulated that, Jim. I think that's dead on.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said for the theme of this movie. I think is one of the strongest themes that we've seen in some of these young adult films of late. Because kind of to Steve's point in chat, a lot of times we deal with the fact that Katniss, she is the most specialist teen who's the one that's going to do all this ass kicking and unite everything, and then you've got what was her name, Triss or something like that. In Divergent, who is the most specialist teen because she's the one who has more personality. I forget. I hate it. Divergent. The more and more I think about it, it's kind of Man of Steel it for me this year. As kind of a side note, there's always that one film that the more and more the year goes on, the more and more I look back and it kind of sours in my memory. And Divergent's been that one this year. But this film here had a kind of the reverse theme to it. We've got this kid who has these different special traits, and one of his major goals is hey, everyone should experience these things that I do. And there's a lot to be said for just this film is able to take a lot more. I guess it's able to, it has more that it's trying to say in a shorter period of time. But I think we keep hitting on this same point. It's trying so much to be Divergent. It's trying so much to be Hunger Game. Even changing the age of the characters, making the Meryl Streep character into such a President Snow type character from Hunger Games. Having just elements like that. It just did not live up to its own promise.
Yeah, unfortunate.
This one had President Snow and Gandalf in the same movie.
What? I don't know what you're talking about, Jim. What are you talking about? I don't know really understand.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's move on to some spoilers, if you will. We need to move along here. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, so spoilers for The Giver are officially fair game. If you've not seen this film yet, feel free to, if you're listening live, step away, come back in 20 minutes. If you're listening via iTunes and whatnot, refer to our handy-dandy show index. Feel free to skip ahead. So, yeah.
So I got a question. What is it with all these movies, and I'm going to even throw Harry Potter in the same thing. Why do they all have to have this ceremony as the kind of the centerpiece near the beginning of the film that like identifies the person as, you're the special one, you're the divergent one, you go to this house and this house, and it's every single movie has this ceremony in front of some community, I guess. It really is getting to be an old trope.
But the thing is that now look at shot. Hold on. It depends. Some of the films you can trace the roots very easily. Divergent and Hunger Games owe a lot of where they sit in in pop culture history to Harry Potter. So because Harry Potter had it, because that's what kids were reading, that's what happened in these other books and these other stories. So that's part of it. But also think about what childhood is like. Think about what it's like to be a kid. Think about what it's like to be a teen. Think about this. Your life is marked by these little ceremonies. You have every few years you graduate from this school and move on to the next one. At the end of your high school experience, you throw the cap in the air and do all of this. So I think that it's not a problem necessarily to have these ceremonies exist. My problem is when the ceremonies are the only way of showing us that the most specialist kid is the most specialist kid. Like, I don't necessarily need to have some adult come on stage and say, hey, this kid is special. Show me the kid being special. Show me in his interactions with the other people, like, why he's so freaking awesome. That's what I think is missing in some of them, and I think that, not to necessarily speak for you, Jim, on this, but I imagine that if those same ceremonies still existed, but the kids were shown to have more personality outside of those ceremonies, it probably wouldn't be such a sore point for you. Does that sound like a fair point?
Like I said, it's just maybe if we had discovered things like this guy's ability to, I don't know, I still struggle with what made him the selected one, other than...
Well, I think one thing that we should consider is that with these young adult novels, and I've read many young adult novels when I was a young adult, part of the anchor latching on point is that you, at least for me, you feel kind of on the outside, and you feel like you want that something special that's going to set you apart and make you, not popular is the wrong word maybe, but make you integral to life and what's going on, and make you special. We're all looking for that thing that makes us special when we're young. And so, with these books or these movies, whether it's, Harry being the chosen one, or Katniss being the symbol of freedom or whatever, these are mechanisms for young adults to sort of latch onto, right? That desire is a hooking point. And so that's what gets them, and that's what brings them on, and they relate to these characters, and that's how they, I don't know. That's just my feeling. I think that's why it's so common in these stories.
It's very well said, too, Brad. Like, you hit the nail on the head. One thing that, so my boyfriend had read this book, and he actually liked this movie quite a bit. And one of the things he was telling me about it that he was kind of missing from this is, he didn't tell me about a lot of the scenes from the book, but he told me about this one. Apparently there's a scene in the book when they're kids where Jonas and Asher are much younger, whatever that age is, but much younger, way before the ceremony, where they're like tossing an apple back and forth. And at one point, Jonas notices it for the first time, and there's kind of like a flash of color to it, and that's the first time you get to see him with this color. So they establish early on, like even as a young kid, he's getting these glimpses that he's able to kind of see past the sameness that's around him. The movie, unfortunately, didn't do that. The first time we see it is when he's when he sees the friend, her blonde hair, just like moments before their ceremony. So it was just kind of like, it felt to me kind of like rushed in, like,
Yeah.
that it didn't really show that he was necessarily the special kid. It showed that he was just like, I don't know, maybe experiencing weird feelings for the first time. Who knows?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean the mechanism of the drug and not taking the drug and what it did was a little bit weird. I'd like to talk about two of the big name actors, Jeff Bridges and Meryl Streep in this movie. By the way, did you guys know Jeff Bridges was a producer of this movie?
Really?
Did
Kind
not
of
know.
explains a little bit, I think.
Was he high when he was producing?
No, I mean he was one of the three producers of the movie, by name, Jeff Bridges, and I just kept asking myself, what is Meryl Streep doing in this movie? It just seems a little bit out of place, maybe for I don't know. She seemed the casting was an odd choice, I thought, to put her in that. I mean, she can act the shit out of anything. Don't get me wrong, and I don't have any real problems with her performance in this movie. I just think the casting seemed a little off to me, and I was wondering what she was doing, kind of. I don't want to say wasting her time, but spending her applying her talents to this kind of movie. It just seemed very odd, a very odd choice to me.
Does she have kids? Maybe her kids loved this book.
I don't know. Maybe she owed Jeff Bridges a favor.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe. Hard to say.
I mean, the other thing is, what was the choice with Jeff Bridges' weird talking style? Like they stuffed his mouth with cotton or something. Is that an affliction he's got now? Like, is that the way he really talks, or is that you think that was something that was done for the movie? Because it was so distracting to me.
I don't know.
Maybe it didn't bother me.
It didn't bother me as much. I just seemed like I said, like it was like a character. Like a lot of the acting in this, a lot of things, like it was good enough, and I thought that his affectation was good enough. I didn't have any problems with it. I don't feel like it necessarily did the story any favors, but it didn't detract from me.
Yeah.
So I gotta ask, because stuff. I'm just going to skip right to the end because I sense this may be a talking point. So earlier in the film, Jeff Bridges is giving, and Jonas is getting these memories or whatever, right, of riding this toboggan sled thing down a snowy hill, and he arrives at this house, and there are Christmas lights, and kids are inside singing Christmas songs, right? And he wakes up, and then at the end of the movie, he crosses through the magic barrier that returns, everyone's memories and changes the world to color and whatever, and he slides down the same hill and gets to the same house, and everything's in color now. So what does that mean? What exactly, is that all about? Because Jeff Bridges' character has never been beyond the barrier, so it's not like, I mean, they said if anyone goes beyond the barrier, this happens, right? So it's not like he's getting those memories from somebody else, is he? I don't understand.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because I think I was as confused as you were, and perhaps it was explained better in the book, or portrayed better in the book. And the funny thing is about that scene, like when he arrives at the house at the end, it felt like the movie wanted that to be its strongest emotional beat, and it could have been if they had maybe fleshed it out a little bit more. Did it feel like because we saw it at the beginning of the movie, it kind of felt sort of like a homecoming, but not really, because you didn't know what it was. Was it that kid's home at one point? I don't know. Or was it somebody's home? I just had so many questions that I think I could have hooked into the movie more emotionally with that scene, even if there was some if there was a little bit more resonance to it.
Yeah, they didn't nail the landing at the end, because I think there's a couple of ways you can look at that ending scene. the very first one just from a like, well, how did that work perspective. You know, if these are people that have lived outside of this magic ring, let's call it, you know, outside of this this bubble of memories, then this means that these are people that have existed back from before all of this, before the memories were wiped from people. So he's tapping into not just old memories that he got from the the giver himself, but these are memories of other people and elsewhere. This is like kind of like old ancient memories that just so happen to be kind of coincidentally bringing things together, which coincidence is a big part of this story. You could also interpret the end there as, and this is where they didn't do a very good job of it. Like, imagine if they had gone a darker route with this. Like, the ending of it is the two of them, like, the guy Jonas and the baby, like, freezing in the snow and pulling on these different memories, and the line between the memories and what's actually happening blurring and leaving on a more ambiguous note. There's a lot of different ways this film could have left, and I think almost an ambiguous ending could have been good. It might have hurt the message. I don't know. One thing oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, did Wiggles indicate what in the book that was supposed to represent, what that meant?
I think to be honest, I didn't talk to him about the ending. I wanted to not have too much of the book bleeding over into kind of like this analysis, this review. I'm going to try to read the book after the fact, which does us no good for this show, but more for my own edification. One thing I really thought about this movie, and I don't know if you guys would agree with this or not, but I felt very, very strongly that if you had a different director, someone that's better at doing things that are more based on emotion than necessarily structure, you might have a stronger film here. For example, and I know that this, I hope this doesn't piss Jim off, but imagine like Terrence Malick with this story. As with all of these different, Terrence Malick is a guy who, his strength is more, at least to me, is more on emotion than on narrative structure. And I think that if you would put a guy like him in place of, especially these flashback sequences, which could be kind of tree of life for you to begin with, I think you could evoke a lot more emotion. Or maybe even take like a Darren Aronofsky or something like that. People that are able to speak more in metaphor through film. Yeah. I would have put either of these two people in this, in the director's seat, and probably seen a stronger flick.
Aronofsky, yes. There's way too much narrative here for Terrence Malick.
Plus, there are no dinosaurs stepping on people's heads, so
yeah. I think Aronofsky maybe could have done a great job with this story, but and again, it's hard to know how much of the blame to lay at the foot of the director versus the writer and the script that he was given. I mean, he didn't. The director's job isn't to take it from the book to the screen. Right. He basically takes the script and story that is written and puts it on the screen in the best way he can. I don't know if the director here, what's his name? Philip Noyce.
Philip Noyce.
I don't know if he had anything to do with the screenwriting here.
Yeah, and his background's like Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games and things like that. Yeah, I don't know that this was necessarily.
He's a kind of build it. It tells me that he's a kind of what I would in my business call a build to print guy. He gets the blueprint and he makes the scenes, makes sure they run together, and the story is as it was written in the script. Right. Not necessarily a lot of creative changes to the story, maybe.
So we do have another movie to get to, but we have one final question about this film, and we'll talk very briefly before we move on. Jesse, again from Tucson, asks, do y'all think that the storyline, being drug abstinent oriented, was purposeful in an anti-drug / sobriety promotion kind of way?
Not necessarily anti-drug sobriety. I think that the drug was supposed to be kind of a metaphor for the different things that blind us, whether it be, government or not doing our own research or whatever it is that keeps us from thinking for ourselves.
The media.
The media, whatever. So I don't think it was necessarily, in terms of its intent, anti-drug. I think that the drug was just a metaphor for the types of things that we use to mute ourselves to the beautiful things that are around us.
Yeah,
Aptly put.
I think I would agree more with that. That, you know, like I said, the drug is, to me, was a metaphor for the things, all the things that control the way we take things in and view things.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned the media. That's the first thing that comes to mind, because anything, social media, TV, you know, people swear to God that the stuff they see in these in their Facebook feed, you know, videos and you know, pigs saving goats from drowning and whatever. I mean, they think that shit is all 100% real if they see it on Facebook. And I think that probably the drug in the movie was more of a metaphor for that kind of effect.
Yeah. All right. Aptly put, guys. Aptly put. Well, we do have another movie to discuss, and I think we're going to go ahead and move on at this point. Yeah, I mean, if you are at all interested in The Giver and you've listened to our spoilers, you may want to check it out. Jim, what were you going to say before we move on?
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, the way that the world was set up, this was kind of like an island community almost. And I wish they had, I don't know if the book does it, and maybe you can get that, Will, when you read it. Was there really something out there in the elsewhere besides one house with Christmas lights on it? You know, it's not super clear what that was all about, and it had me questioning it pretty much the whole movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wish they had. I mean, we did talk about the world building that they had done within the bubble, but outside the bubble, not so much.
Mm-hmm. Right. Indeed. Well, at this point, I'm going to say let's have a little ceremony and release this movie to elsewhere. Sorry. I couldn't resist.
Too good, too good.
I did laugh at that line in the movie. I did laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, here we go. Let's go ahead and move on to our next movie called Locke. All right, so as usual, we're going to be discussing this film spoiler-free until we give you a warning. Will, this movie is one that not a lot of people necessarily know about. Kind of give us a little bit of a short background and whether you think people should actually go check it out or not.
Yeah, Locke. This is the story of a very, very successful man played by Tom Hardy. He's got a great marriage, he's got 2 loving sons, and a career that he is really, really, really good at. Over the course of one night and multiple phone calls, Tom Hardy's character Locke discovers that just one mistake can set in motion a chain of events that's going to threaten everything that he's worked for. Part of the gimmick of Locke is that the entire film is set inside of a car. Like, the entire film is just Tom Hardy in a car. And every conversation is him having some sort of cell phone conversation with someone else or interacting with himself. It's a gimmick. Absolutely sure it's a gimmick. But for me, personally, it's one that I found worked. I found Locke to be way more gripping than the premise might have suggested. This is on video on demand right now. It's on Amazon and probably other places as well. That's just where I happen to see it. And I would say this is a high recommendation for watching. That said, this film does play best if you can watch it uninterrupted. This isn't a film that I would say is like movie night with friends. You know, everyone's grabbing a beer and chatting. This isn't the type of film where you might want to watch it in chunks throughout the day or watch a little bit before bed each night. To me, this was a very taut character study, and for me, those always work best when I can focus without distraction. So, do I recommend you watch Locke? Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Jim, how about you?
Yeah, well, I'm right there with you. We watched it this weekend on, I think it might have been iTunes. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure, but I know it was out there for rent. On video on demand. We didn't catch it in the movie theater. I did want to when it came around in the independent art house theater here, the Loft, because I had heard good buzz about this movie. It stars Tom Hardy as Ivan. Is it Ivan Locke? Is that his first name? Do you remember, guys? No, I don't remember. But anyway.
Yeah, it's Ivan.
Ivan Locke. Also, this one is, and he's the only actor in this movie. Well, he's the only actor to appear on screen in this movie. As Will said, the whole movie takes place inside a car, and it's basically, we got to be kind of careful talking about this movie because even talking about the premise could be considered maybe a bit of a spoiler. So I'm gonna try to dance around that subject a little bit, and just say that I really like this movie quite a bit. What I liked about it is that it really explored a unique and not very common type of storytelling that we don't see very often, and that's putting us, the audience, as an observer, directly there in the car with this guy as things are unfolding around him, and how it took very mundane, everyday, situations, nothing fantastical, but how it just builds one on top of the other to create a building sense of drama and tension throughout the movie. It's a very intense movie, and I think that's getting back to what Will said. You kind of want to sit down and take this movie in from the beginning and get that feeling of building the tension from the beginning toward the end of the movie. All I'll say is that I think Tom Hardy gave a great performance, but also so did a lot of the other actors. I mentioned that not anybody else appears on screen, but there is a lot of voice acting in this movie, and I thought they all did a really, really great job, a believable job of being the other person on the end of the line. Definitely worth seeking out. Go find it on VOD. It's a slow burn kind of a movie. We talked about that. Nothing super fantastical. There's no spaceships in this movie. Or space battles or bank robberies in this movie, but I would definitely seek out this movie. This is one that I think most people would enjoy. So seek it out.
I have to say that I don't know. I liked this movie. Maybe it was a little overhyped for me again, but I think I did a pretty good job of divesting myself of expectations. It kind of surprised me, actually, how much they were able to do with one limited sort of set, if you will. Again, without going into spoilers quite yet, it was pretty convincing. Like, I felt like I was in the car with this guy, like eavesdropping on his phone calls. And as things are going down and unfolding, I don't know, it reminded me a little bit of Breaking Bad in terms of how it sort of layers in different tense moments until finally things just get to the point where, like, I'm just kind of like, oh God, like, I'm so anxious, like, what's going to happen and how's this all going to shake out? And the movie did that subconsciously for me. Like, I didn't even realize it was happening, but I just found myself getting antsy and, like, just anxious. And so I don't know, I kind of like it when a movie surprises me like that. It was kind of delightful. It was weird, though, because this was probably my misunderstanding, but given the trailer that I saw, I thought it was like a race against time, like some guy on the other end threatening his family kind of movie. I think I'm thinking of too many Liam Neeson on a plane movies or something. But yeah, so I was kind of like scratching my head, like, wait, what is this movie about? What? But yeah, I mean, I liked it. I wouldn't say it's the best movie of the year or anything, but certainly way freaking better than The Giver. B+. I think it's definitely worth checking out on VOD. Totally.
Yeah, I think a pleasant surprise also. I was just reading a little bit about this movie, about how they made it. Did not cost a lot of money to make. I mean, they were basically pulling a car around on a flatbed at night. filming this movie with Tom Hardy, having conversations with real people in real time. These other actors were in a conference room and having these conversations with them, scripted conversations. Just kind of fascinating how they would make this movie on a low budget and have kind of the courage to go ahead with this movie. Like, here's a guy who's, well, maybe we shouldn't get into too much before we get into spoilers. Are we going to hit spoilers soon?
Yeah, but before we do, I wanted to bring up something that Brad had mentioned, just because it's very non-spoilery, but I think it pertains to kind of like who would like this film. Brad, you mentioned Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. There's an episode of Breaking Bad, again, I won't spoil what the premise of that episode is, but it's called The Fly, and it's what's called a bottle episode. And a lot of times in television, the bottle episode happens mid-season. It's the episode where they've already used all of their budget at the beginning of the season, at the end, so they need to fill the gaps by having a limited locale episode. So in this case, The Fly is just an episode where you've got your two leads in one room just interacting with one another. And while bottle episodes tend to not have as many like explosions and like crazy things happening, they tend to give you a lot of really, really good character moments. This is the bottle episode in movie format. That you're not going to see a lot of like overt things in this film, but if you want a film that really burrows down into the essence of just one individual character through his interactions with other people, this is the right film for you to watch.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just disappointed that it didn't feature the Locke that I really know and love.
Nope, wrong Locke.
No John Locke. Anyway.
No.
Yeah. No, Will, that's a fantastic
Ivan.
point. It's his brother Ivan. That's a fantastic point, Will. I agree. When you limit yourself to one tiny locale like that, the trappings of the world fall away, and what you really have to focus on is the character drama, and that's the meat and potatoes anyway in a piece like this. So I think they did a good job. Let's move on to spoilers. Are we good? Yes?
Yes.
All right, so I'll say it again. If you are listening live, you may want to step away for 10, 15 minutes, come back. If you're listening on iTunes and Stitcher, use our show index and skip forward to plugs. Do not miss them. Do not end the show prematurely right here, because we have good stuff to recommend to you. Anyway, here we go. Spoilers for Locke. So the whole setup is he porked this girl while he was on a work trip, and now she's pregnant. And he's found this out, that she's having a baby right now on the eve of the biggest concrete pour in Europe. And he loses his job, and oh my God, he's going to go do the right thing by this woman, unlike my bastard, loving, touting father. What did you guys think of the setup for this?
I liked it.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I liked it because the premise of the film is basically him in the car driving and talking. So what they did is they dropped us right into the action, and everything we learned about this character was through his phone conversations. We didn't have to have some sort of narration of him at the beginning, this long narration of, once upon a time my life was good, but now things are about to change. A shittier movie would have done that. Mm-hmm. Or a shittier movie might have done like a flashback and shown like the affair once upon a time just to set the tone. But here we go straight into the car, and he starts having these phone conversations. And what's great is all of the different characters. Jim, you mentioned it before. It's not just him being fantastic in this role, although he is. He's getting a lot of really talented voice acting to work up against. You're getting these people that are displaying very complex, very human emotions that don't come across as caricatured. The woman that he's rushing off to meet with, you find out that it's, not only is she having his baby, but she's a woman who's battled like loneliness and depression. And who's a little bit older, a little further up in her years, compared to, she's not like thing. You've got a wife who is trying to process this. You've got my favorite character of the film, aside from of course Tom Hardy, was the beleaguered employee Donald, played by Andrew Scott, who's frantically having these phone conversations trying to get this concrete pour to go off without a hitch. You don't have to set up a whole lot with this film because, honestly, the story elements, they're there. We know who's doing what and why they're doing it, but that's really secondary to how this character interacts with these things, how this particular guy deals with the monkey wrench that's been thrown into his perfect life. So for me, it kind of worked.
Oh yeah, I mean it totally worked. And to get back to all the other characters, it seemed like the whole world is basically unraveling around this guy. Every conversation he has, there's probably a handful of other characters that he talks to throughout the course of this movie on the phone. The pregnant woman that he only met one time and got pregnant. She's hysterical because she's alone and she's having this baby and she keeps asking him, "Do you love me? Please say you love me." And the wife is flipping out because he's told her the truth. That he's gotten this woman pregnant. It was just one time, honest. And what? Drink?
I know. just the one time, I promise.
Yeah. So she's absolutely flipping out. The foreman that he left back on the job, who he's trying to walk through this concrete pour, which, by the way, I found fascinating. I found the whole.
Me too.
I found the whole concrete job itself kind of a mini story within the story that I was really fascinated with, and the details that they went into, the technical details about the tonnage of the stuff and the grade of the concrete and what they had to do to the rebar and all that stuff to test it before the pour went off. I ate all that stuff up because it's like project management 101 kind of stuff.
Yeah. Definitely, and it's so interesting too because I do I do a lot of tech support for people over the phone or over the computer, and it's as he's like, Donald, you're going to go and get the folder off my table, and then you'll find a number. Do you see that number? Okay, now Donald, you're gonna call that number and you're gonna say blah blah blah. I'm like, oh my god, this is totally what I do every day, I'm like, I don't know. It was kind of uncomfortable, but kind of awesome. It was, yeah.
I know what you mean. I used to manage a fairly large call center. And so there would be stretches where, I would be off work. It would be evening. It would be 9 o'clock at night. I'm watching TV. I've got my beer in hand, and then I get a frantic call from one of the managers. Just, oh my God, this terrible thing just happened. Half of the systems are down. And it's like, okay, we can walk through this. Walk over here first. No, don't do that. Do this. And it's like a lot of times you see script writers. And this isn't all of them, but you see a lot of films where the script writers kind of play lip service to a particular job. I think that's why you get to see so many people in movies are a lot of protagonists in movies are creative types or writers and stuff like that, because that's what a lot of script writers know how to write. But the writer on this either knew the concrete business, knew project management, knew how these types of things can work, or they did a damn good job on their research, and that's something that impressed me.
Yeah, who'd have ever thought you could get so much drama out of pouring concrete?
Right?
But we have another comment from Steve Bubba, and he says he thought the voice acting of the son, that the older son I think he was talking to, was incredible. The movie rested on Tom Hardy's shoulders, but the son brought out some of the most emotional moments for me. So he's going off doing this thing that he feels is the right thing to do, but at the same time he's going to make the hard choice of not being there with his sons. If there's an important soccer game going on, that the family was supposed to all watch together, and he had to miss out on that. And the mother was upset, of course, and the son is there with her, and he can see what's going on, but he doesn't really understand. Really strong emotional moments in that character for sure, Steve. I liked the fact that even though everything was going haywire around him, he was, you talk about poise under fire. That dude I mean, the strength of character that he had to do the right thing. I mean, he had a couple of near breakdowns, but for the most part, he was able to hold it together in a very impressive way. So the character was really well written that way. I could totally see this as a stage play. Like,
yes.
you know, he's sitting there in a set in a car. The voices are coming in over the, you know, the speaker, and he's doing his thing. It was very much set up like that. It could have been like a one-man stage play, and I like that about it too. The only thing that got me was I was not satisfied at the end of this movie, with the ending of the movie, I should say. Mm-hmm. I think for the most part, I mean, they did resolve, maybe partly resolve one thing, but a lot of this, and I'm okay with endings that are open-ended and unresolved for dramatic effect, but this one kind of ended somewhat abruptly for me, with no real inklings of resolution. Maybe it was asking me to what's the word I'm looking for? Interpret too much at the end and kind of formulate what I think the ending was going to be. What did you guys think of the ending?
I think it's more a matter of, and what I liked about the ending was, I think it was less a matter of being like an ambiguous or like fill in the gaps ending, and instead this is a movie that says, hey, there's really no right answer here. There's no like clean ending. Like, this is a movie that really rested its hat on the idea that the difference between, and they even say this line in the movie, you know, the difference between once and never is everything. This guy made this one mistake, or made this one action, we'll even call it that, you know, this one action, you know, where he got this other woman pregnant, and his whole life is now forever changed. He is now fired. He is now without, you know, his wife does not want him to come back. You know, at the end of this, there isn't a, you know what, let's talk it out, let's work it through. You know, basically he hears that he is not allowed to return home. And not only that, he didn't make it in time to actually see the baby being born. So this is a man who had everything, and right now is in this limbo state where he doesn't yet have anything. So that's what I like so much about it. It doesn't wrap things up too cleanly.
You can even say he's become locked out of his former life.
Yes. I choose to believe after the ending that I'm not sure I believe that he will never get back together with his wife. I don't know. You don't know, but I know. Everyone's going to interpret different, but I think, you know, the fact that he's got two young sons that need him didn't seem to be on the wife's mind very much. So there's that. Of course, the guy's fired from his job, but he seems like a super duper kind of foreman, construction kind of dude. I don't think he's going to have trouble getting another job.
He's going to be rehired in that job. They're going to bring him back on because he still made sure it got done.
What's so interesting about kind of like just hearing, you know, both of you had really interesting reactions there that I think speak to the strength of this character. Jim, you said, yeah, I'd like to think that kind of based on what we were shown, he's probably going to get back together with his wife. Brad, you say, you know, because of the good job that he did, he's probably going to get rehired. And I think that goes to show you just how successful this particular character is at what he does. He is a good man. He is a good father. He is a great manager. This isn't a shitty human being that we're watching get his just desserts. This is a guy who is quite good at what he does on all counts, who has had everything pulled out from underneath him. But I think we're left with the idea that if anyone can get his shit together and turn something around on this, it's this guy.
Yeah, he'll just have to have some cool conversations with his calm, cool, collected self, you know. Now listen, I know that I fucked another woman, and that she's having my baby, but it'll be okay. And here's how it'll be okay. Let's talk about the practical ways that it will be okay by taking some practical next steps. Like, he's got it.
Next step, right. That's the thing. That's the irony about this movie. He made his decision at the very beginning of the movie to turn right instead of turn left. And he made a decision to be with this woman that he got pregnant while she was having the baby, to see the birth of his baby, while everything else kind of went to shit on him, right? If he hadn't made that decision, you know, I mean, and that's the thing you got to weigh, is if he hadn't made that decision, you know, he wouldn't have been. He didn't end up being there for the birth of the child anyway. So you got to wonder at the end, like, was this all worth it? Like, what?
But he wasn't his father, and that's the
What's
big.
that?
He was not his father. By going to be with her,
right?
He
Right.
became not like his father, and
so yeah, let me explain that a little bit. During the movie, one of the other conversations he has is with his the presence, or what he feels is the presence of his deceased, I guess, father, who I guess, you know, ran out on the family, you know, did some things, you know, that made him not a great father in Ivan Locke's eyes. And he just did not want to go down that path that his father went down. He wanted to try to do the right thing, even though at the end he wasn't able to. At least he tried, right?
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the success of this character, is like, you know, we feel that like the rug's been pulled out from underneath him on all of these other areas, but at least in his own eyes, he did the right thing. He's a better man than his father was. So even if he lost these other things, he at least has this one thing. He won this one particular small battle while losing all of these other things in the process. So I guess there's different ways that you can count, like, what is a successful man, what is like a good man, what is a man that is you know, accomplishing what he wants to accomplish. And in this one regard, in at least he was not there for the birth, but we're probably left with the idea that he's going to be there shortly after, right? Like that he's not, you know, he's still going to go there. So he's, you know, even if he's lost all of these other things, he salvaged this one thing and become like a stronger man for it.
Didn't he stop the car at the end?
he did, and it was weird because at first I thought he was like pulling into the hospital. But then he didn't. But then he like turned around and got back on the road. And at first I was like, did he just turn around and head the opposite direction? But no, I think he actually got back on the highway to go to the hospital.
Yeah, it's not clear. Again, it's not super clear. Yeah.
But
you know, it's a fascinating movie, and it's a fascinating study in how to tell a story. It's a fascinating character study of this one dude, and I think at the end of the movie we know what kind of person he is. After spending 90 minutes with him in the car, and I thought it was very well done, and it's it's one of those smaller movies that I think people should seek out.
Plus, I thought Ivan Locke was kind of cute, so I didn't mind staring at his bearded hunkiness for 90 minutes. That was
Tom Hardy
nice.
is kind of bearish.
Indeed, Jim Poliafico.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, all right. Well, guys, I think that about wraps us up for Locke. Are you ready to move on to some plugs?
Let's do it.
All right, Jim, plug us up.
So, saw a few movies this weekend besides The Giver and Locke. Saw a movie called Stranger by the Lake.
Talk about plugging things up.
Did you end up seeing that one?
Yeah, I think I plugged that one on a show.
Plug that one?
Yeah, but go ahead for it, because I think it's a movie that's worth talking about.
I thought maybe you had, but I'll put in a second plug for it. Unless you guys remember what Will had said about it. It's basically a slow burn thriller that's set at a cruising spot for gay dudes on the shores of a lake somewhere in France. One of the guys falls in love with one of the other guys that he meets there. Even after finding out that this is a potentially dangerous situation, but he's somehow attracted to this dude anyway, and that's where the kind of the conflict arises. There's a sense of danger, a real sense of danger in this movie. But what I found its portrayal of cruising, gay cruising and casual sex and hookup. The portrayal of this particular hookup spot, which is basically a nude beach on the lake, and the accompanying woods, I guess, in the area, just fascinating. And this is another. This is kind of a bottle movie too, Will, right? I mean, the bottle being that beach, the woods, and the parking lot. That is it. I mean, this movie doesn't stray from that area. I also loved, I don't know, Will, if you noticed this or mentioned this before, the sound design in this movie was amazing. Just the ambient sounds of just the wind in the trees, the walking through the woods when they're swimming in the water. The
penises dangling back and forth.
Yes, the slurping sounds during the moments of oral sexuality.
The fat.
No, seriously though, we'll get to that in a minute. But from the get-go, when they showed the guy swimming in the lake, I'm like, wow, there's something about the sound of this movie that really sounds incredible. It is a French movie, so it is subtitled, but there isn't a ton of dialogue to worry about. It's not like you'll be struggling to keep up. And
just as many moans as anything else, yeah.
What's that?
Just like not as much dialogue as there are moans and groans.
Yeah. And it's always educational to know how to say "I'm coming" in French. I mean, 'cause that's
wow.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, there's a lot of this movie being about a gay hookup beach, nude beach, and being French. You can imagine there's a lot of male nudity in this movie. A lot of uncircumcised male nudity in this movie. Very realistic sex scenes. This was not a porn movie, but there is some really hot, I would say, realistic is the only word I can think of, sex scenes in this movie. Not often do you see, well, I won't say it. I won't spoil it, but... But it's a good movie. It's available now on Netflix. It's called Stranger by the Lake. If you have Netflix, just pull this one up. I think it's worth a watch. Mm-hmm. Will, I think you enjoyed it too.
I did. It's one of those movies that. Yeah, I did enjoy it. I appreciated it. It's a film that has it combines a lot of very raw carnal elements with some kind of beautiful, graceful elements too. It's kind of hard to describe, but there were like silhouette scenes, like where it's like, oh, that's touching, and like, oh my God, there's a giant dick on my screen. Like it's like it pulled you back and forth between these different things. In this really interesting little Hitchcockian, pun intended.
Yes.
Story. Yeah.
Hitchcockian.
Indeed. All right. Yeah, I saw it over the weekend with you, Jim, and I'm like, they're all skinny dudes with big penises, but this is kind of hot and weird all at the same time.
So here's a little bit of a funny story behind this. So a lot of times when I go to bed at night, I have an iPad, and I like to watch TV or movie shows on it until I fall asleep or whatever. And I have this list of movies that I want to watch, and Stranger by the Lake has always been on the list. So I'm like, all right, Brad's asleep. I'm almost asleep. I'll pull this movie up and see. So I started watching it, and I got about 30 minutes in, and I'm like, I need to stop here because this is a movie that I know Brad would want to see. If I told Brad I saw this pretty awesome French movie about these gay dudes hooking up, and there's a lot of sex and a lot of erect penis, and he would be a little bit disappointed. So I did stop the movie, and we went back and watched it from the beginning.
I'm a sucker for dick. What can I say?
Wow.
Anyway. All right. Will, what have you got this week?
Brad, you're our favorite dick sucker. So for me...
wow.
Sorry. You gave me an opening, and I went for it. So yeah, for me, it's actually been kind of a weird weekend. Usually, it's like, okay, we watch whatever we watch for the show, and then I try to offset it with something else. But for me, and this is a little off the theme of the show, but the new Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook came out just this last week, so I was fully invested in that. So I don't have a film to point you guys towards, but I do have a video that is on our Facebook page that I think is pretty cool. It's on the Movie Bears Podcast Facebook page. It's from a YouTuber named Mr. Stratman7, and this guy took the idea of, like, what if Michael Bay, the guy known for explosions and loud noises and all those things, had been the director of Up, and then he made a trailer for that movie, and it is fucking hilarious. I loved it. So you can find it on YouTube. The user is Mr. Stratman7, or if you'd like to make it nice and easy, come to the Movie Bears Podcast Facebook page, and it's up there as well.
Indeed.
The only thing missing from that video was the overt misogyny. I couldn't find that. I was waiting at the end for, like, what's her name, the guy's wife before she died, to bend over and he, like, them zoom in on her ass or something. But that didn't happen. So I was a little disappointed.
She's got her walker, she's bent over, and it's like...
Yeah.
And
They missed an opportunity there, I'm just saying.
I guess. All right. Well, for me this week, I am going to plug a TV show, and that is The Legend of Korra. Nickelodeon recently made a decision to move the show off of its broadcast offerings and make it online only. And it's interesting because now that the show's online only, and this probably has no bearing on why that decision was made, maybe it does, I don't know, but it's gotten really violent and dark for a kid's show. I don't want to spoil, but some major shit has gone down that I'm like, really? This is a show for 7-year-olds? Interesting. I think this is a phenomenal series, and this season has, I don't know, it's had kind of a weird start, but totally been digging it. There's only a couple episodes left at this point of the season. People are saying it's coming back next year for its 4th and final season. I don't know if that's true. I've not seen an announcement. I hope it does. But, man, this show just continues to get better and better and better. And, you know, whether you were a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender or you're entirely new, Legend of Korra is a great series. Will, do you watch it at all? I don't remember.
I don't. I watched Avatar, loved Avatar. This one did not have very convenient streaming options compared to Avatar. Like, Avatar was on Netflix, so I was able to watch all of it there. But then Nickelodeon pulled off of Netflix before Korra hit, and it just, I haven't been able to easily track it down.
That's a bummer. I think you would really, really enjoy this. And every time I watch an episode, I'm like, I wonder what Will would think about this. So, I don't know. If you ever get the chance, Will, you should...
I may just have to snag it on iTunes if it's there.
Yeah, give it a shot. All right, guys. Well, that wraps us up for this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, Steve and Jesse and some of the other folks we've seen here. Yeah. Love having you guys with us. And for those of you who are catching us on time delay, on Mountain Coast time, kidding, sorry.
MCT, whatever that is.
Continuity, bitches. Yeah. So thank you for downloading the show as well. Just kind of a quick aside. I was crunching some numbers recently. I haven't mentioned this to you guys yet because I thought it would be fun to sort of discuss on air. But overall, we recently crossed the 75,000 download / listen mark, and that's pretty awesome. We haven't kind of celebrated a milestone like that since 40,000, so kind of a big deal for us. We're on our way to 100,000 listens. Maybe we'll hit 100,000 when we hit 100 episode.
Oh wow, that'd be perfect.
Have to see how the math works out on that. That would be great. I just don't know.
Yeah,
it's doable.
Probably won't line up, but anyway, it's kind of awesome.
If you keep mentioning how much of a sucker you are for dick, you might.
Maybe. Maybe so.
Yeah. I tuned into the video show, but I didn't see a dick one. Damn it. Maybe next episode.
We got to find a guest star named Dick to have on next week. That way we can say, "Come see our Dick." Come see Dick on this week's
We'll show you our
podcast.
Dick on next week's show.
Anyway, just wanted to say thank you so much from the bottom of our Movie Bear hearts to those of you who tune into the show every week. You guys are amazing. We have the best listeners ever. We appreciate you guys interacting with us on Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter and all of that great stuff. So keep it coming, and we'll keep delivering, our weekly Gab Fests. Hope you can continue to enjoy them. See you all next week. I have no idea what the heck we are talking about next week.
No, it'll be a surprise.
Yeah, I don't know.
It'll be a surprise.
Surprise! We'll see. Anyway, good night, everyone. See you next week. Take care. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.